The Roman Labyrinth. Chapter 6. All Aboard. Maybe one day we shall be glad to remember even these things. Virgil 7th, 90 BC. Some were married, which was bad, and some did other things which were worse. Rudyard Kipling, The Mark of the Beast. 2007, September 5, Moscow, Rome. The silver Boeing softly hummed in the sky. Anna's mind had been working full throttle for the last 2 days, and now badly needed rest. She reached for pillows and blankets and made an effort to sleep. However, the 2 women of Georgian descent who sat in front of her made this task nearly impossible. In their early 50s, decorated with as much jewelry as a Christmas tree, they were solving a crossword on the last page of a colorful newspaper. It greatly irritated Anna that most of the time the women had no clue to the answers. What annoyed her even more was that she couldn't divert her mind from coming up with them. Place of refuge. 5 letters. Starts with O. Oasis, Anna thought to herself and opened her eyes. Anna looked around to see if anybody else was upset with the 2. Nobody, however, seemed to pay any attention to the women, and Anna didn't have the courage to say something to them. Now she had to wait until they solved, or rather, gave up on solving their crossword. She thought of the man whom she was supposed to meet in a couple of days, as she settled in Rome. From Professor Ferra's dossier, Anna knew that alongside his being a monster, he was a brilliant mind, an offspring of one poor aristocratic family. He graduated from a leading Roman university with a gold medal and before graduation became a faculty member. He won awards for teaching, published articles on different historical topics, delivered brilliant lectures, and wrote a book that aroused controversial responses in certain circles. During his trial, Professor Ferra denied any memories of this murder. He remembered waking up in his bed that fateful morning with all his clothes covered in blood. He remembered that he and Roberta had an argument, remembered them leaving the restaurant, but couldn't recall anything after that, which was, as the specialist put it, not unusual. Oftentimes the mind subconsciously suppressed people's most dramatic memories, or else Professor Ferra was building his own case away from jail, leaning more towards a mental institution. Roberta was 4 weeks pregnant when she was murdered. It was established that Professor Ferra was the father of this baby that never was born. Roberta's pregnancy, in fact, was considered to be the main motive for this murder. Professor Hadrian Ferra at that time had already been engaged to the daughter of the university president. The marriage would open to him a world of opportunities, and the police found evidence that Roberta was blackmailing him. Flora's partner also starts with F. Fauna, Anna silently said to herself. She didn't want to think of the murder or the murderer anymore, and since she couldn't sleep either, she decided to reflect on something good, and she thought of her mother. Svetlana Ludova came from a peasant's family in Tver's province, a family that lived on the land that generations of Ludovs had been cultivating. Her father was a tractor operator, and her mother a bookkeeper at the collective farm named, like many others in the Soviet Union, after Lenin, the leader of the Red Revolution. Svetlana completed 10 years of schooling in 8 years and graduated with the gold. She came to Moscow when she was 15, and at this tender age was admitted to the literature department of one of the prestigious Moscow universities. Svetlana found herself surrounded by students who were 3, 5, and even 7 years older than herself. She was pure, naive, and vulnerable, like gardenias blooming in January. The world of the big city differed in every way from the little world of her home village, and Svetlana didn't understand this world, was afraid of it. She immersed herself in her studies, And soon it was clear that this young country girl was far more intelligent than the graduates from some prestigious Moscow schools. Although there was great competition and simony and nepotism at the university, before Svetlana graduated she was invited to stay for graduate studies, which would open for her immense prospects of teaching, possibly even at her alma mater. The life, however, became very different for her mother, but Anna didn't want to think of it now. Indigenous, 6 letters. The third one is T. Native, Anna said to herself. She chose to think of another woman who played probably an equally important role in her life, and who opened for her the door into the big, although mostly imaginary world, Maya Bratvarnidze, or Aunt Maya. She wasn't Anna's aunt, but that's how Anna always addressed her. Aunt Maya's father was Georgian, Gruzin, as Aunt Maya would call him, but her mother was Russian, and this softened Aunt Maya's prominent features. Aunt Maya's grandfather and great-grandfather on her father's side all served the empire. Her grandfather served the Tsar's government before the October 1917 revolution, and after the revolution he continued serving as an ambassador of the Soviet to Italy and Spain. His son followed in his father's steps. Main man in a monastery? Abbot, Anna soundlessly pronounced. Unlike many other Soviet officials, Aunt Maya's father sincerely believed in the great cause and lived his life according to the moral codex of the communism's builder, which at the end of the communist era left him with nothing but 2 apartments in Moscow, one for himself and one for his only daughter, Maya. She never married. She said she was just too smart and too educated for this. Within a few years of retirement, her father had drunk himself to death, and the great dynasty of the state servants came to an end with Aunt Maya. When Anna, due to her illness, or rather to the prescribed drugs, fell behind in school, Aunt Maya volunteered to tutor her. Aunt Maya didn't have children of her own, so she poured all her love on her adopted niece. Anna studied with Aunt Maya partly out of obligation, partly out of a growing attachment, and as she did, the little girl came to realize that she'd grown to love learning. She stopped taking the pills that slowed her down and immersed herself into a newly discovered, fascinating world of knowledge. Aunt Maya had never really been around children and had no idea how to deal with them, and to Anna's utmost delight she treated her as an adult and as an equal. It was Aunt Maya who shaped Anna's character, who gave her the kind of education that no school would be able to give. The seatbelt light came on, and the captain's voice warned for air turbulence. Anna sat stiffly in her seat, thinking that virtual travels were safer endeavors. "Something to drink? Alcoholic beverage or juice?" The stewardess appeared out of the blue. Anna asked for some water. No ice. The 2 ahead of her finally acknowledged their failure to solve the crossword, and in no time dropped off to sleep. Anna's mind, however, refused to rest. She looked around to switch her mind from thoughts to observations. Most passengers obviously belonged to an emerging class of Russians who could afford an apartment in the city decorated according to the European fashion, probably also a cottage, dacha, in the countryside, and had an office job or their own business. All of a sudden, Anna felt bitter because she was alienated from those people, although they were from her city, and many of her age. Most were traveling with their spouses and children of all ages. There were, however, some singles. Anna could only guess what was driving them to Rome. Her eyes fell on a short, stout man, 40-something, with a ruddy complexion, a square face, and iron-grey hair that lay flat upon his head. The man looked like a retired officer. Maybe he is a secret agent that is accompanying me, Anna thought. She didn't doubt for a second that the general would send one with her. Her eyes then stopped on the young man that she had noticed earlier at the airport. To Anna, he resembled a professional wrestler, tall, around 6 feet, flat stomach, wide shoulders, although stiff-faced, brush-cut hair and rigid muscles. He was probably going to a wrestling competition, Anna thought, or maybe he's part of a renowned Russian mafia. Or else, "Stop being so suspicious," she said to herself. Anna looked around and noticed 2 picturesque characters. This even made her forget about her spy game. The man in a fine, expensive suit was probably in his early 50s. He was slim with thinning blonde hair touched by gray and an imprint of significance on his face, an upper-middle-class man. Leaning on him was a young blonde woman with wide-set eyes, in a pink sports suit and running shoes. From time to time she would lift her head. From the man's shoulder, look attentively to the sharp contour of her companion, whisper something into his ear, fix his hair, and rest on his shoulder again. Anna immediately excluded the possibility of a father-daughter relationship. The husband and wife alternative didn't fit either, but it didn't look like a new and occasional relationship either. Anna immediately excluded the option that the girl was hired to accompany the man. She would hardly pass the aesthetical standards of this business, and her dress was too casual and cozy. The man and woman presented such a sharp contrast that Anna's eyes returned to the couple again and again. There must be a story behind those 2, she thought. Anna could now discern in their behavior, in their facial expressions, an alertness. When for the 3rd time Anna's eyes crossed with the tiresome look of the man, she realized she'd probably gone too far. As if settling this business once and for all, the man gave her a deep stare, and Anna read in his eyes, Yes, it's what you think. So what? It's sad, isn't it?" Yes, Anna could understand the man and his woman very well. For a few days they'll remain hidden from inquisitive eyes, and then they'll return to their habitual Moscow routine. Once again, Anna knew the answers to this riddle all too well. Anna thought of Tony. She was growing up right before his very eyes, yet he never saw the woman in her. "Only Sofia Kovalevskaya," he later told her with a dim smile. "Sofia Kovalevskaya was a woman of stunning beauty," Anna retorted then. "She certainly was," Tony nodded. Yet for many years she was married to her husband and didn't know him as a man. This conversation happened 4 years after he married Pauline, the woman his parents told him to marry. There was a moment when the lightning of seeing Anna's gracious and elegant beauty struck him, and the old friend Tony felt what the other men feel in Anna's presence, a primordial desire and fear. He realized that he made a grave mistake in marrying Pauline, and with shame recognized that he married her for money. He tried to deny it for a while, but now he saw it clearly. He was never truly attracted to her, although he had to recognize she was a very good-looking woman. He tried to make himself like her as a woman, and he was surprised that it worked. But they were very different, those two, and the spiritual alienation between them grew constantly. Pauline was smart enough to realize, if only with her female intuition, that if he were given to choose, his choice would hardly be in her favor. Anna was the only woman who could understand Tony's witty character. She had a pacifying influence over him, and for this Pauline forgave her a lot. Neither one of the women decided to compete for exclusive rights over their man. Pauline figured it could have been much worse, and was thinking of Anna more in terms of a free shrink for her crazy husband. In addition, 2 years ago, Tony lost his prostate to the progressing tumor. His new condition permanently healed the issue of Pauline's jealousy, and the two women, in a way, felt at ease with the situation. Anna's thoughts were interrupted by the voice of the captain on the speakers, announcing that in 30 minutes they'll arrive in Rome. She made her way to the washroom, asked a stewardess for more water, and returned to her seat. The airplane began descending, and the discomfort of popping ears started to wake people up. Those sitting by the windows anticipated the landscapes of the approaching capital of Italy. Anna also pressed her nose to the glass and studied the wing, then behind and below it, at the clouds in many amusing colors and shapes. For a few minutes the plane was encompassed by a soft white cloud, and then suddenly to Anna's eyes opened a panoramic picture of the 2,800-year-old city that had grown from a small village into the center of a vast civilization that dominated the Mediterranean region for centuries. The silver Boeing passed over the highway, dotted with hundreds of tiny, slowly moving vehicles of vivid colors, and curved to the right, descended into its new altitude, and after a few minutes its tires touched the ground in a puff of smoke, landing them at Leonardo da Vinci Fiumicino Airport.